On Instagram, for instance, our account is fash_rev. And the way that we communicate is precisely what you were saying before, so that everyone does have agency to take part in this conversation.
The Earth Locker, chatting our way to being better Earthlings.
Yeah, but now you sound like a Tesco commercial.
Oh.
There was quite a fashion of women getting their lips tattooed red or their eyebrows shorn off and tattooed back on.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Just like cosmetic tattoos. That's a weird area.
People get their eyebrows tattooed.
But wouldn't you have to like get rid of them first?
Yeah, you have to. I guess you have to laser them off, and then you have them all tattooed in.
That must be
that's
only
a brutal
if, like,
tattoo as well.
Yeah, if you've got eyebrows this long and they're like getting in the way, like the Dulux dog from that paint ad, then I'd probably consider it. But why other than that would you do it? Do you know what I mean?
I think women they
to have more Byron-esque
groom them a
eyebrows.
lot, don't they?
No, I don't really. Me and my missus get into this all the time. She's doing masks and peels and things like this, and
There's always a peel. There's always
something. And I'm just looking like, what is the point of all this? I don't have to do any of this.
Thing is,
I don't get it. It's a weird industry. It's a
It
weird
sort of convinces people that you're a constant project that needs refinement. That you're.
We are totally speaking out of our ass. I mean, there might be a lot of validity to what women do. I just don't understand it personally.
There's certain ones like that. My friend Augustinus Bader, who does those stem cell creams, which is literally it stimulates the stem cells in your skin to basically get younger.
Really?
Yeah, his creams are insane. Like,
do we have many of them lying around, the stem cells in our skin?
Yeah, they just need to be activated.
Really?
Yeah, activates the stem cells.
Well, the stem cells, they get them from inside your bones, correct?
Yeah. Well, you could. Yeah, there's them there, but there are stem cells everywhere. And they're just sitting there, so that you can kind of turn them into whatever you want to. So if you want to turn them into white blood cells to be able to heal something, that's what I had done on my back.
Wow.
So you can have stem cells injected into an area, and then it kind of tricks the body to go, oh, you've injured that area, and then it'll flush that area with the cells to heal it.
Crikey.
It's amazing, yeah. Stem cell stuff is incredible now.
Wow. You don't want to build up too many white blood cells because that can get itchy.
Is it actually?
Is that talking from experience?
No. I mean, there was a friend, a pal who worked for the mayor.
I know
and
him. Yeah.
he, but like with apparently, like a little bit of a jock itch.
Yeah.
What happens is histamine is released, and that's what the lovely itchiness is, right? Or unpleasant itchiness,
the lovely itchiness.
Depending on your
First
preference,
time,
right?
it's like, oh god, it's so good.
Oh,
it's lovely.
And then loads of white blood cells crowd around.
But there's also kind of like an inflammation.
Yeah,
reaction.
it's like the inflammatory,
inflammatory response.
Acute inflammatory response.
Yeah.
So your body's
if you're
actually
lucky,
attacking yourself.
Yeah. That's basically what it does. Because when I had stem cells in my back, it was quite a substantial injury. So my disc was like fully out, and that's what happened. Is they flush that area with the stem cells, so it becomes immediately this massive inflammatory response. So for the first 24 hours, you're in bed rest. You can't move. It's
all swollen.
Yeah, like you're around your disc. So I was, laid in a bed there in Denver, Colorado, and just.
Oh yeah, right.
Just trying to hang in there. Yeah, it was.
How many days were you bedridden?
Only like 24 hours, really. And then you start to be able to move a little bit because it's just it's that inflammatory response. But I'm a big person of mental thinking as well. Like I knew that it was only doing good down there. It's like just like blood rushing to that area and like dealing with the problem.
It's interesting you say that because. Imagine back in medieval times when they're putting leeches all over someone's ass.
It's a good feeling. It's
like,
good. It's good. It's doing good.
I know it's doing good down there.
Oh god!
I seem to remember someone saying that actually leeches do something.
Yeah, there's definitely
some
something
science
in that.
behind that.
Yeah, I think there is something in it.
I think we need to find an expert on this. Anyone knows any leech practitioners?
Leech experts, leech doctors,
leech wrangler,
or if anyone has
a leech wrangler,
there's a time machine.
They move in herds. We need a wrangler.
Well, back in the day, back in the day, they thought infection travelled by smell. You know, that's why you saw those weird medieval masks with the big long beaks, because they'd stuff the beaks with all of these herbs. Yes, so that the bad smell wouldn't get in their nose and their eyes and stuff, right? And then there was a few surgeons and stuff. There's one guy called John Lister, who the mouthwash Listerine is named after, in fact.
There you go.
There you go. Who was
like a fact.
quite a tough surgeon. He was quite notorious for his toughness. But he was one of the first proponents of germ theory. He was saying...
See you later, Byron.
See you, Byron. He was saying the infection of bacterial infection, it starts before the smell starts. The smell is essentially a symptom.
Yeah, like a byproduct
of these invisible fellas. And they were like, what do you mean invisible fellas? They're like, there's invisible fellas everywhere.
There's no sense in that.
They're like, don't be ridiculous, man. We're moving into the future. But,
yeah, that's well, it's a bit like the whole COVID thing, isn't it? Because it's like, what are the first? Because they are the invisible fellas.
Yeah,
there's like lots of invisible.
And
fellas
they create such an inflammatory response, don't they?
Yeah.
That's what actually kills you.
Yeah. Inflammatory response.
Your
in
own
the
immune
lungs.
system.
Yeah. It's also what happens in autoimmune diseases and stuff. It's your own.
Right.
It's your own immune response attacking your body.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it was interesting. We were talking to Dr. Momo, and he was saying that the immune system sits there in the gut with the gut flora, and it's just waiting for signals.
Yeah.
You know,
to be told what to do.
Yeah, and depending on the nice food or the shitty food or whatever is tailored for you, your immune system will kick in and go or go
Yeah.
So it's basically it's the microbes' bitch.
It is, yeah. Yeah, whatever you feed the microbes.
And that's a quote from Dr. Momo.
Of Viome Inc.
Do you know what film I watched there two nights ago? Eurovision, the story of Fire Saga. Did you see that?
Hang on, is this the one with Will Ferrell? Is that that?
Yeah. I was with a mate of mine who just popped it on sort of arbitrarily, and it turned out to be really, really good. It was really,
Is it
really
funny?
funny
Is it comedy?
and dramatic. Yeah. I was whooping and cheering. I wanted to be like in a cinema with loads of people. Because it's quite
music based, is it?
It's quite Glee-esque, you know, when the sequences of music start, it all goes a bit auto-tune, which is slightly annoying. But Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams are fab. Really, really, really funny in it. I don't know why I just... that's just the top of my head.
Yeah, I saw a picture of the poster the other day and I thought, oh, that looks interesting.
They take the piss out of Icelandics really, really well.
Brilliant.
And like... how I believe a few years ago Iceland, because there's only about 320,000 people in Iceland.
Oh yeah, that's why it was so depressing when we got beat by them in the World Cup.
Yeah, because one of them's like a baker, one of them's an assassin, one of them's like. But there's a whole thing about like a few years ago. I think the Iceland tourist board government basically said, no more tourists, right? Yeah. We don't want you anymore because our infrastructure can't handle it. And they take the piss proper out of that in the movie. It's like some Americans show up and they're like, we hate you! We don't want you! You're the worst people on earth! But it's Will Ferrell, so it's funny.
Yeah.
But I must admit, Will Ferrell has always been a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yeah.
He's kind of a one-note actor in comedy scenes. I mean,
well,
he does it well.
He does that thing. I think he plays an innocent who's kind of destructive and who has no self-knowledge, you know, and is completely deluded. You know, if you look at Ricky,
just like me, great,
just like Byron,
just exactly like Byron.
Hey, so guys, today speaking about Eurovision and all things Euro, we're going to have a little fashion episode today, but not your normal fashion episode.
What's a normal fashion episode?
I don't know. You know, where we try on outfits and we have montages and
we should do.
You know, because we do a lot of those on the Earth Walk.
Yeah,
I've been trying to get you to do an episode with your shirt off, but you keep resisting.
I keep resisting. I'm very close. You know, doesn't this
sort
of count as
gradually sort of doing there's some dots in this as well.
Yeah,
so
it's getting slowly but surely.
Kind of teasing.
I got to borrow that white T-shirt you had in the other one. That I actually just thought was a rag or a bikini top, and then just put it off.
That's like a Rabsy Nesbitt one. Do you know who Rabsy Nesbitt is? Do you know Rabsy Nesbitt?
No, but I just remember seeing it on the telly guide, but I never saw it.
Well, we have our lovely guest here today from Fashion Revolution.
Yes,
Orsola de Castro. I'm going to let her into the Zoom call now to come onto the podcast.
What a fabulously fashionable name.
got her there. Accept. Accepte.
Hello, Orsola.
Hiya.
There you are, right side
We've
up.
got the screen in front
Sorry,
of
I'm
Ursula's
definitely
face.
trying to.
We can probably
We're
do
not going to use the video eventually, are we? So if
We
my
can
phone collapses, that
go
should be
off
all right.
gallery view,
We will be using the video, Orsola, but don't worry, if it collapses, it collapses. It's all part of the charm.
Can I ask you? My name is pronounced Orsola.
Ursula, like
Ursula.
Ursula.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't
Of
corrected
course.
people for years, but now too many people are saying it wrong, so it's.
Yeah, we can't have that.
No,
So
no,
you're
no.
using video, so basically I do lipstick.
We
then,
can
yeah?
use the Earth Locker as a vehicle to
Yeah.
right the wrongs of your name.
To advertise
Definitely.
worldwide.
So yeah, today on Earth Locker, I think giving your guys' perchance for going on the catwalk often. I'd had the nice conversations I had with
Byron,
your
such
stylist, Michael,
You're such a dad.
who's a really cool guy. And he had made some recommendations because I want to talk about people that in fashion world that are trying to make the earth a better place, kind of fitting in with our ethos here.
Yeah.
And one of the people that he had recommended was I look up Fashion Revolution, which has a really great presence online.
Yeah.
And the more I read about it, it's pretty incredible what they have done. That's, I don't know, would you call fashion group almost like a grassroots movement within the fashion industry? And also like,
where it's kind of sorely needed, right? Because
Yeah.
fashion was ecologically the second most destructive industry on earth, I believe, after oil.
yeah, and Ursula is one of the founders
That's-
of Fashion Revolution. So can you tell some
Yeah.
about it?
Yes. So actually, the statistic is slightly changed, as statistics tend to do. So we don't really know it's the second, but we know it's pretty much up there with the worst. So something needs to be done. Fashion Revolution was born in 2013 as a result of the Rana Plaza disaster, which was the biggest fashion industrial disaster.
That
in
that
the
was
history.
Ursula. That was a garment factory, was it?
Yeah,
that,
tell us a little bit
that
about that.
collapsed.
That was a garment factory in Bangladesh, making for some of the world's biggest retailers, and not just fast fashion, premium brands as well. So it wasn't just making cheap clothing, it was making clothing full stop. And it collapsed after, however, a few days in which the garment workers were worried for their lives. They could see the cracks in the wall. They had spoken to their supervisors. They said they were feeling unsafe. So not only did the garment factory collapse, killing 1,138 people, but we are potentially the owners of clothing that were made just before that collapse, because the clothes that they made while they were fearing for their lives was nevertheless packed and delivered out of the factory and shipped into stores. So this is really the tragedy with when we look at unethically made clothing, that we're talking about clothing that is made in profound indignity, from people that are really scared and exploited. So we're not just exploiting our environmental resources, we are exploiting, the supply chain workers that make our clothes. And Fashion Revolution is a big global movement. We have a presence in so many countries worldwide, and with a view to raise awareness from multiple points of views, because it shouldn't be just what we think in the West, but what happens in producing countries is even more important, that we hear those stories, we have visibilities over those people, and this is what we try to do as a global movement.
Did it change the landscape in terms
Yeah.
of the absence of trade unions in Bangladesh and stuff like that after the collapse? Did it change the landscape of garment manufacture in Bangladesh and similar countries? Because I suppose people after the collapse in other garment factories looking at cracks in the walls and stuff, but ultimately were powerless because they have no trade union.
Yeah.
Or is that?
You hit it right on the head. So unfortunately, no, Fashion Revolution did not change the landscape. I think we can say that we changed the language. So when we started, words such as supply chain, transparency, public disclosure, unionization, as you mentioned, were not the kind of words you'd be talking about at the school gates or in supermarkets, where you are now. And that's potentially because of our success and many other organizations such as ours campaigning on the ground. But something did swell up when we came into exist, and and things did change in terms of awareness and understanding. Obviously, after COVID and during COVID, when we've seen the behavior of most of the mainstream brands not paying their orders, forcing their garment workers either out of work or into work in very precariously unsafe conditions, we know that we haven't achieved as much of what we wanted to achieve as we hoped. Unionization amongst supply chain workers ought to be 100% the first priority. We're better, but we're not there yet.
Right.
Tell us, Orsola, you mentioned there that there were big brands who weren't paying for big orders during COVID and stuff. Did that cause massive disruption in countries where clothes are manufactured?
Yes. Massive. And we are listening to the voices of, garment factory owners such as Mustafiz Uddin in Bangladesh, who is really being very vocal about the type of, absolute scandalous behavior when it comes to brands who are refusing to pay, refusing to collect on orders that have already been produced or already cut, and so on and so forth. What we have seen during COVID is a total, lack of respect for people. That our industry, our society, the fabric of our society is growth, but without prosperity. In a prosperous situation, we would be protecting the people who make our clothes and not just the ones at the very top of the pyramid. But we are hell-bent on growth, and growth without abundance is sterile. And in a way, it provides exactly the kind of problem that we're witnessing now, dwindling resources and horrendous working conditions for, so many billions of people potentially. So, this is why, in a way, the visibility provided by COVID, the tipping point that we are witnessing, hopefully will have a direct result in the way that we choose to actually purchase our clothing. The onus is not on citizens, it's on brands and governments, but citizens certainly can look at their own wardrobe and develop better habits, small steps, and somehow become involved in the bigger conversation.
Are there any companies that you know of that are doing this the right way, that our listeners can be like, that company there I know is doing a much better job?
Well, I think that goes straight into your fashion, your transparency index that you guys produce, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I get it that it's not there to be a Bible, like who's a good company or a bad company, but tell us more about that.
It also, so the Fashion Transparency Index is about what is disclosed rather than their performance. So it still requires whoever reads it, first of all, to read it first in its entirety. But secondly, to be the kind of citizens that says, okay, I'm actually going to double check that claim is true. And this is what's lacking, you see. So there can be as many organizations such as ours bringing awareness, providing data, and creating information. But if people choose to get information the same way that they get a pair of cheap trousers, i.e. I've got a £5 in my pocket, cheap jeans, no questions asked, then we're not going to be evolving. What we need is a generation of citizens and consumers who are prepared to develop a strong personal opinion and to scrutinize the brands. So in reply to your question, are there any brands that are doing better? My better may not be the same for you. So, if you're really, into animal welfare, then you need to follow the brands that are operating in a way that it is right for your ethics, for your stomach, your gut instinct, and your principles. I've got different needs altogether. I'm interested in recycling and upcycling, and so I look for the companies that satisfy me or that I trust around that. But this is a complex issue, and we need to, each and every one of us, give it that little bit more time. At the beginning of COVID, everybody became an expert on viruses. So my suggestion is, let's take this time and become a little bit more of an expert when it comes to the fashion supply chain. I mean, for instance, links with fashion and racism, links with fashion and Black Lives Matter. That's been really interesting for people to begin to understand that fashion exploits people of color. Full stop.
You know, Ursula, like you said about scrutinizing facts that are given to you from, you know, charities and non-profits and people who are trying to change. You know, for me, like, if I'm sat at home, I do want to be an informed consumer. I do want to scrutinize. I suppose, you know, for the normal person, you have a search engine on your computer is probably the first place you're going to start. How are some ways maybe in which people could remain more informed and more questioning of, you know, things like, for example, the Transparency Index?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, a search engine at the end of the day is a private library. So, you know, you're not going to have all of the information that you want. So you also need to be prepared to maybe, you know, go sideways from that search engine, or pick up the phone and ring up a friend of yours whom you trust, who might be a bit more of an expert. The point is that, you know, or pick up this podcast and have a listen. You know, the point is that we need to create the dialogue right now at this point in time. And a dialogue is a conversation with multiple points of views. And the whole point is that we need to find what feels right with us. I mean, I'm asked more often than not, what do you think about the conscious collections? And these days, my reply
sorry,
is,
Ursula, I don't know what they are. What are they? What are the conscious collections?
Yes, so, well, you know, when brands, you know, sort of high visibility mainstream brands, they do a special collection which is all in organic cotton, or a conscious collection implying that it would be better than the rest that they do. And there's always this conversation, glass half full or half empty. Are they greenwashing, or are they doing a step in the right direction? And that's my point, is that I don't really want to be the person that influences that choice. I would much rather inspire people to say, does it sit right with you, once you've read 2 or 3 articles from different opinion leaders giving their own points of views? That's what we need. You know, sustainability is in many ways, although it's been trending for billions of years, or none of us would be alive, we perceive it as a new science. And, you know, and we just need to give it that little bit more time, celebrate that complexity, and choose to become our own experts in the process.
I suppose these days, Ursula, these days there's so many things, you know, that people have to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're saying about listening to opinion leaders speaking. You know, for me, if someone really sounds like they know what they're talking about, you know, and they've gone out and done the research, instinctually, it's kind of, you know, from a blank place with no basis of reference or no expertise my own, I'm going to listen to someone who's gone out and done the research, and it's like, of course, I have a questioning, inquisitive mind, but I'm struggling to see what sort of expertise we're supposed to have around leaders, you know, who've come back and they have differing opinions about, you know, fashion ethics. But it's like, for the normal person, it's hard not to just listen to those experts and go, well, they must know more than we do, you know.
Well, my suggestion is listen to a few rather than just one. I mean, you know, when you're buying car insurance, you're not going to buy necessarily the cheapest. You are going to find the one that fits your, you know, the policy that fits your life. And, you know, with us experts, it's the same. You know, I talk about certain things very well, but I'm not really well versed in others. And I would rather people listen to those that are better informed than me, or more, you know, cultivated than me, or just simply more intelligent than me in certain subjects. So that's what I mean. I mean that, you know, we need to look at this information as something that we do enthusiastically, and not because we have to. But, you know, the reality is that people have made those connections when it comes to food. And organic food is now available in every supermarket, and it's much less niche than it was before. And that came from people wanting to find out more, making their own mind up. Am I going to be a vegan? Are we making too many avocados? Am I fine with my quinoa? And so on and so forth. And that conversation has permeated so many strata of society because we've bothered to talk about it at a very deep level amongst each other, the good and the bad of it. Is it niche? Yes, it is. It's too expensive. Yes, it is. How can we make it more available? Now it is. We need to do exactly the same with our clothes. So first of all, the skin is the second most absorbent body after the stomach.
Yeah.
So we are absorbing chemicals each time, not just we wear, but each time we wash, other people are absorbing our shit in their machines.
We have a skin
it's not just
microbiome.
our community, it's everybody else.
Yeah.
But the more we talk, the more we will find out, the more we will be confident in making our decisions. And that's really what we need. We need people to say, okay, I'm really okay to do that because I can do that every single day. That'll be my change. Yeah. I will buy less, I will buy more secondhand. Or I will wash less, I will wash better. Yeah. Or I will look after my wardrobe, I will mend, etc. Or I will actually write about garment workers to the brands. Little steps, informed, comfortable choices.
I think that's really interesting. When you talk about sustainability and the fact that we've always been doing that, because it's about the management of resources, that is sustainability. And as a nation for the past few hundred years, when you talk about sustainability, it becomes more and more aware. It's like, how do we manage resources here? And we just think about our own backyard and we think about our own family. And then we start thinking about sustainability, like we use organic cotton as opposed to regular cotton. We use less chemicals in our clothes. There's less, but now we understand that sustainability is not just the cloth and the material being made, the material, but the sustainability of the people making the clothes. Yeah. Because for hundreds of years, the sweat factories and sweat plants, I mean, these people are a resource that have been just completely annihilated,
abused,
so that we can have, as you so rightfully did, people will see on your website that you have this shirt. Buy a 2-pound t-shirt with this great little kiosk. I mean, such a great little thing you did.
There can be a rhetoric for people to think, that if you look back, this fashion industry was, some sort of nirvana that never existed. So the fashion industry, the industrialized fashion industry, couldn't be more racist. The cotton was picked by slaves in the American South. It was then woven in Victorian sweatshops rife with child labor and exported throughout the world by the East India Company, which is basically the roots of all colonization. Yep. So to look back and say, we had some kind of an industry when in the year 300, we really haven't. So we need to evolve into a good industry. And there are pockets in the past that we could use and choose for inspiration. But really the only way that we're going to do it is our own ethics. I mean, the conversation around equality is incredibly important when it comes to something like a big supply chain. Because you see, how can all of the garment workers in Bangladesh right now that are fearing for their lives, having to walk 150,000 miles to go back home, or are working in factories which are full of COVID, how can they respond to the need that we have, the urgency to really look at our planet's resources when their lives are so abused? So as you say, it is not just the sustainability of the resources, but the way that we treat the people that work in this industry. The two things are 100% connected.
Intertwined.
If we're not all equal, we're not equally invested in change.
So looking at if you definitely, I do recommend everyone goes to her website and look up the documents on
Go on, what's the website, Byron?
On Fashion Rev.
www.fashionrevolution.org.
So they have the transparency document, which is great. The 2020 has lots of great information, and then the whole spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet. Is phenomenal. And I mean, when people though are looking at that spreadsheet, the thing that struck me was the vast majority of the companies that have volunteered to give you information, or you've taken information on your own, are all under 50% transparency, and most of them are quite low. The highest is 70-75%, right? How do we interpret all those numbers? What does it mean?
Yeah, what do this 50% transparency
Well, it basically means that nobody performs 100% public disclosure. By the way, we only review the really, really big brands. So 250 of the world's biggest brands. So these are organizations that have, really a total obligation to tell us where they make our clothes and where their resources come from, because they're so huge that their supply chain has a massive impact.
H&M.
So we really need to be able to scrutinize, their claims. But the truth is that nobody, right now, the fashion supply chain is unbelievably disconnected. And if you look at big fashion houses' departments, they're a little bit the same. The designers don't necessarily know the people that do the sourcing, who aren't necessarily connected with marketing. It's all disconnected. So it's very difficult to trace a straight line, which is why disclosure is the key here, because it goes back to that insurance thing. Disclosure means that there is somewhere online where information should be easily absorbed by the citizen for them to then do their own due diligence. Right now, we have brands that disclose a lot, but their disclosing is so complicated. You need to be Einstein to decipher it. Now, we consider that to be bad practice as well.
Give us an example, Orsola.
Actually, you said H&M. H&M is actually one of the higher scorers on their
It
transparency.
was the highest scoring this year.
There we go.
But
72%.
do make so H&M.
H&M is
so
number one.
transparency does not equal sustainability.
Okay.
Transparency is a
This is-
process by which you make your data and your supply chain available to be scrutinized. So you could be scoring 0, but doing an awful lot, but just not publishing. But and I'm really, I'm not in the policy team, I'm the creative director. So if you look at the frequently asked questions on the Fashion Transparency Index, it will probably answer better than I can.
Okay.
But I can talk about it from a cultural point of view. So transparency is a set of data. Public disclosure is, having that information succinctly and simply.
Could you tell us, Orsola, sorry, in terms of the disclosure and it being very, very complex and hard to digest for the normal consumer, what does that look like? Are they telling you, this is the managerial schedule for the, what is that complex information? And,
again, you need to check the methodology, because it will very clearly state what kind of information we are looking for from the brands. But the Fashion Transparency Index is done. Again, it will also say how many brands check the questionnaires and so on and so forth. But, it really is important to stress and double stress that transparency and public disclosure doesn't necessarily lead to best practice. It leads you somewhere where you can double check. And that's the great cultural change, because an industry such as fashion that has designed itself to be inscrutable, designed itself to be exclusive, designed itself to be somehow behind closed doors, is going to have to change everything in order to provide visible, but above all, comparable informations on their website. Because I want somebody who's not necessarily a computer genius to go onto H&M, who are first on the score, check their score and say, well, actually, that's still not enough for me, because the list of factories that you are, including still doesn't tell me whether the union, whether they're all unionized and so on and so forth. So it's a way for industry to scrutinize itself and citizens to understand.
Well, I mean, think 100% what I really appreciate about what you guys are doing in Fashion Revolution is that it's just like we talk about diet. It's just like we talk about environment. Everyone just needs to be critical.
Yeah.
We need to start asking more
Start
questions.
asking why. Yeah.
Asking why, and there's no easy answer.
And also just taking control for yourself. So like and understanding that you as a consumer actually do have the power, the choices you make, and educating yourself.
Yeah. But if you see our fanzines, which are also on the website, or our Get Involved facts, I mean, you know, to be honest with you, the Fashion Transparency Index for us was always designed to be more of an industry tool. It just so happened that because Fashion Revolution became so successful, it sort of borderlined onto citizens. And we are actually reviewing it at present, you know, potentially to bring it back for it to be much more of an industry focus. But if you look at all of our fanzines and the way that we provide information, the visual way on Instagram, for instance, our account is fash_rev. And the way that we communicate is precisely what you were saying before, you know, so that everyone does have agency to take part in this conversation in a way that feels right for them. You mentioned diet. How many of us had gone on a diet for like a week or a juicing, whatever, and then gone back to Mars bars coming out of our ears, you know, as soon as it was over? This is what we mustn't do with fashion. It's better to take on something small but consistent, rather than making a grand gesture that lasts a week and then buggering off, you know, disappearing again into. You
mentioned before washing better, you know,
yes,
making a decision
huge.
to wash better. So is that about choosing detergents? Is that about how would one?
It's a combination. It's about choosing to use very, very, very little detergent, because actually 1 teaspoonful of powder is enough.
1 teaspoon.
But it's about looking at the materials. So we know for a fact now that polyester, each time it's washed in the machine, it releases 700 million or something microfibers into the waterways, which are then, you know, they evaporate and they rain back on us. So we are now, you know, we are absorbing polyester microfibers invisible to the naked eye.
Wow.
Almost in everything we do. Every time we bathe, it's, you know, it rained in London recently. It's on the top of Mount Everest. They found it at the bottom of the deepest ocean.
Well, you know what's interesting?
It's on my plants.
You touched on it before about the gut and about the skin, and the skin as an organ. We have our own skin microbiome, like we have a microbiome in our gut. We have a skin microbiome, and the health of our skin can tell a lot about what sort of things we're taking in and what kind of chemicals we're taking in. And it's actually shocking the amount of toxins that are in things like our clothing and the choice we make in our washing powders that actually do have a huge effect on our overall health. So making these decisions is not just about better for the environment, better for the people who are working in these factories. It's actually for your own health as well.
Completely, 100%. And it's also passed on. I mean, my friend Wilson Oriema did a great little video on, you know, the effects of chemicals on the skin and so on and so forth. But back to polyester, once you know that, you know, you're going to think twice if you're going to buy a polyester camisole, because you know that you're going to sweat in it. You're going to have to wash it nearly daily. But maybe you'd think, okay, but I can buy a polyester jacket because polyester is so easy to clean. I can sponge it, I can refresh it, I can spot clean it. I don't need to put it through a regular wash. So and it's the same with food. You know, if you're buying a yogurt, the first thing you do is that you check how long it's going to stay in the fridge, and is there too much plastic in it? So it's kind of making those connections, not just for your fridge, but for the clothes and our wardrobe as well.
What's your opinion on bamboo?
Again, bamboo is a durable fabric that needs to come from organic, though, because the chemicals in breaking down the bamboo as a fiber are, you know, potentially very, very toxic. There is an organization, a brilliant organization in the UK, but available globally, called The Sustainable Angle. And every year they do a brilliant fabric expo. I get all of my fabric information from there. I'm not the expert on materials, but it's an interesting subject, so I suggest The Sustainable Angle. But knowing your materials, it's exactly the same thing as knowing your ingredients in your food.
My friend's mom made fabric out of rhubarb recently.
Wow, that's amazing.
Whoa, see?
Pretty cool. Nice. It looked like a superhero costume.
Yeah.
It was sort of bright red. With
a crumple hat. Hey, you know what I
But
really...
there's loads of silly
Rhubarb
things you
cake.
can do in the house, to mend your clothes, for instance. I mean, personally, I believe that there should be a mending station in every street corner, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah,
mending
give people
should be
back some
as
self-sufficiency.
available as dry cleaning and more so,
Absolutely,
luxury
yeah.
mending, punk mending, whatever.
In your
But,
opinion, what
there's
is the
things-
what? Sorry, also, what
No, no.
in your opinion, what is the best material you've come across, and the process and the least sort of chemicals in that material that is a nice garment?
Anything organic is better than anything non-organic. So
Right,
each
so it's like
material
food,
will
like you say, yeah.
have kind of different properties. I mean, there's always a slightly more sustainable version than anything we've got around. So if you have to buy polyester, 100% make sure that it is recycled. At least it's only really offending sort of at least not in its extraction. Cotton is one of the most toxic materials, both in terms of how they farm it and how they treat it. So organic cotton, vegetable dyes, for instance. I'm a great believer in wool. I find wool is merino wool, for instance, works brilliantly for me because I like it on the skin. Merino wool for me is a bit of a miracle material because it can take over from so much polyester. It's great for sportswear. It doesn't feel too hot. It's odorless. It actually prevents odor. But again, you need to double check that it is,
You also have to
coming
wash
from
it less
a
as well.
sustainable source, and people are treated fairly as they make it. So it's always so many things to take into consideration. It's complicated, but after a while you'll get it.
Quickly, can you just tell me, because I think it's great when I find anyone that starts a movement the way you have founded with a few other people. Just tell me quickly, if people get passionate about something like you did, how did you get around to making this such a big deal? Because it's very well put together, the fashion revolution, and your messaging and the website, for an organization that's been around for 5-6 years.
Yes, well, we're very young in the space. Well, we're very energetic. I think the difference with Fashion Revolution is that, well, for starters, all of us worked in the fashion industry from a sustainable point of view when we met. So, and we'd all known each other for a long time previously. So we were like, it looks like we're new, but as a team of people, we sort of knew each other and had collaborated for a long time. Our second difference, I guess, is that we're not negative, we're positive. So we want to talk about fashion from the point of view of people who understand it. So we're not necessarily shaming. We're very honest, and we're very, saying it as it is, but not necessarily shaming. So that has given us also a point of difference.
Have you had fashion designers accept your invitation of a meeting or try to evade
Oh,
you?
yeah, Mother, we speak to anyone. I mean, absolutely. I also I was working for many years. I was the founder and curator of Estethica, which was the sustainable fashion area at London Fashion Week for the British Fashion Council. So, brands are really interested in knowing how they can do more. I mentor very young brands, emerging brands, some of them very successful now, but that's something I very much do. So brands are not just curious, really wanting to make a difference. Obviously, the bigger that they are, the harder it is to turn around the ship. But I promise you, I do not know right now, this minute, I do not know of young designers that aren't either 100% committed to working 100% sustainably, or that are really looking at how to make
and aware. That's actually great, because I always believe that it's like educating the future. I think that the same thing with food and the environment is like it's educating the youth of today on how to act tomorrow, because they are the future. They're the future of all these industries. So instilling that education in them is exactly what will make the difference in the long run. And I think if we're seeing that pattern emerge in all these new up and coming designers, then I think that's real hope for the shift that will happen.
Yeah,
I think it's all about.
And I also think that what we are seeing now, which is to me the most exciting thing, coupled with these young designers that really are committed, COVID is showing us that we've got Gen Z and Snowflake that are going to be intensely politicized, and I think that's very exciting.
What's that, Ursula? What did you just
Which
say?
one?
Gen Z and Snowflake?
Gen Z and Snowflake? What's that?
Generation Z, and the new generation apparently is going to be called the Generation Snowflake.
Yeah, but I mean, is it a good idea for a generation to be highly politicized when they know fuck all?
Yes, it is.
No.
I think it is.
But it is, because it'll be, so when you saw the kids taking on to the, the Friday for Future, some of them were coming back from those demonstrations saying, we've learned more during a political demonstration that we did in 1 year of citizen studies at school. So if school does not provide the information that they need, and we know they don't, then we need to allow these children to get together and spark each other off and, commit. And they really are. Kids are going out on the streets to, defend and protect their black and brown friends right now. And they're doing that with knowledge. They're embarking knowledge in order to understand more. It happened spontaneously, and it happened from, having an open heart. So I think that this is a really brilliant step. And by politicized, I don't necessarily mean that they're left or right, but they're socially aware and environmentally aware, and they want to make a difference. Because if they don't, they ain't going to have a planet to inhabit sooner.
No planet B. No planet B.
Exactly.
That's great. That is really great. Ursula, thank you so much for taking a little time. I know it's hard to get everyone together.
It's such a pleasure to talk to you and see you. Nice.
Yes, and you, my love.
Your video didn't cut out. Brilliant.
Yeah, yours was one of the most consistent videos we had.
Thank you so much for involving me, and it's been lovely to talk to you and meet you all.
Yeah, and keep doing what you're doing. It's brilliant work you're doing. And
please, and just repeat that again. Everyone, check out your website, which
which we will put in the links as well.
Yeah.
We'll put in the notes.
It's so the website is www.fashionrevolution.org, and the Instagram and Twitter is @fash_rev. Yep. Thank you so much for your support, because obviously we can keep doing the work, but if you guys don't keep supporting,
absolutely. Well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, everyone's got to think. Thank you so much for your time.
Will you come back after the COVID and be in our little studio with us?
We'll have a chat in the room.
I'd love to.
These guys need a makeover. They love that stuff.
Yeah.
Love to.
All right, thank you, Ursula. We'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers.
Bye, Ursula.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
Do you know I knew a girl called Polyester once. Big girl.
Really?
Rugby player.
His actual name was Polyester.
Yeah,
Christian name.
She turned me around. She turned me upside down and tombstoned me. No, she didn't.
Like the Undertaker.
She doesn't exist. I made her up.
Oh. Damn it.
I was going to say.
There could be someone named Polly with a last name Esther.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
like
true. Or middle name. Yeah, a middle name could be
Esther.
Polly Esther. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I have an auntie called Esther. Auntie Esther. Once I was in Esther's garden, and my cousin Barry threw quite a heavy boomerang at me, and it smashed my nose in two.
Ooh.
Broke my nose. My nose was like moving around my face for about a month.
So it's a secret to your beautifuln's.
This is a secret to my asymmetry.
I was going to say, you've got a pretty good nose considering.
Have I?
Well, very good actually. Yeah, there's not really any bumps in it.
But do you want to look up into the caves? Any bulbies going on there?
You got a lot of bats up there.
You've got a decent
couple
flair.
bats.
You've got a good flair of the nostril.
Your nose is like a 70s trouser.
You got nostrils like bell bottoms.
Going back to what we just talked about with fashion and why I think it's super interesting. The way fashion, like perfume and how it's marketed, is 100% how everything was marketed with food 10, 20, 30 years ago.
It's amazing the comparable factors in it.
And it hasn't caught up yet with the way food has. Like food has become hyper politicized, people hyper aware, always trying to greenwash what they're doing. And that's great, but it hasn't come across in really clothing yet.
It's kind of coming though, you're right.
It is coming, and we need to get that.
I'm wearing bamboo jocks, for example.
Yeah,
just have a bamboo stick on my hands.
I suppose my probing for all of the awareness building is like, I got some pants. I got them off an ethical website, and they're very, very good. They're more robust than cotton. Bamboo pants, lads. Seriously, they're light and they're flexy.
These are boxer shorts for the American listeners, right?
Boxer shorts, exactly. But they're sort of ones that hug the jennies. And but anyway, like I don't know. After the nice ethical site that makes all the statements, I suppose I at the moment I don't have the knowledge to continue the research. I don't know how to follow the chain to where those pants come from. And I suppose that's what the transparency index is trying to do.
It's trying to help us
clarify, you know,
to ask the right question. I think it's just that if everyone just finds whatever it is they're interested in. So if it is sustainable materials, if it is equality in the supply chain, that it's not sweat labor. I mean, I remember the biggest controversy 10, 20 years ago with child labor. You know, Nike got done in for some couple, like ton of, and everyone's
Kids
really
are-
got no more kid labor.
Kids are excellent at making pattern, though. Really good. They've got little hands, little tiny little fingers.
Well, they nailed the tick.
Yeah, they got the tick down, you know.
So
I mean, you know, it's
but you know, but it's still, people have to be paid well for what they're doing.
Yeah,
and we have to
Absolutely.
just keep
like,
pushing.
to be
Because
honest, like
normal.
if you're walking down your high street in the UK, like I think, you know, transparency index is one thing, but like if you can buy a T-shirt for £4, £5, you know, that cost has been paid somewhere back the line.
Yep.
And you know, it's like I didn't want to ask Ursula to name and, you know,
Name
to
and
name and
shame.
shame. But I'm like, I'd gladly, like, there was a great doc called The True Cost, who named, you know, H&M, Zara, Topshop. These are the biggest sinners. These are Primark, you know.
Yeah.
These are big sinners. But, you know, at the same time, they're poorer people go there and buy clothes for their family, you know. And so we're kind of in an economic system now where,
Well, it's
you
the
know,
same thing with
cheap
the food,
clothes
isn't
is
it?
absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely.
It's like, oh, that's cheap. I'll buy it. I can afford
It's
that
a
for my
pillar
kids.
of our economic
Like if you've got
system
4 kids, 3 kids, you know, and you've got to buy them all school uniforms.
Yeah.
Are you going to go and look for the best?
No,
thing?
because and they're going to grow out of it in 6 months.
Also, the
you're
school
lucky.
might only provide one version of that school uniform. So kids who spend majority of their time in a school uniform, it's like you're not going to say, well, my kid's not wearing that because it's not
If you're the fifth,
organic Peruvian cotton.
yeah. If you're the 5th kid down as well, the school uniform, there's only like crest and a sleeve and a bit of it. Everything else is just gone. It's been ragged.
But you know, like at my school for my son, they actually have meat swaps. Like the parents will come together once a year and they bring all the old clothing.
Oh,
And
that's
so the
good.
underclasses then can just inherit the hand-me-downs from the upper grades. You know.
Yeah.
And I think no one should be able to be so proud not to do
That's
that.
it.
It's great.
I think, as Ursula said, that lovely thing of having repairing stations at in communities. It's that stuff. It's the local. Think local, act global, baby. Baby.
and I think that-
Plus, this shirt is definitely poisoning me. I got it in Indonesia.
I mean, you're a living example for being a little eclectic, but some people just refuse to have anything look secondhand or from a thrift store or not on the peak of fashion. And that's about messaging. People have to realize that whole perfect image that everyone's striving to be influencers like the next Kendall Jenner. I mean, it's just BS.
Yeah.
You know, come on, just have a wrinkled clothes, have clothes that have been sewn. It's cool. It actually says more about your character and who you are as a person rather than having contoured makeup and the latest designer wear.
you look
you
like
know?
you're just aspiring to a very expensive image in a magazine.
Yeah.
You know,
Which says fuck all about who you are as a person.
It's interesting she said
but
about the
it's
merino.
a taste thing, I suppose.
It is the merino wool thing because I've got merino wool tops like this one. I can wear this for so
very
long,
soft.
and it hardly ever needs to be washed. It never smells. No, it never smells. Always fits so really nice, and I almost wash it when I do wash it because it's a hand wash. But I give it to my mother-in-law. She's amazing at hand washing. But love you, man.
Country bumpkin.
I am, yeah. But yeah, she's very. I give her my pile of hand washing, but I almost wash it out of. I should. As opposed to it actually needs it, and there's sometimes I think actually no, I'm just going to keep wearing it. You know.
I mean, that goes. I've never heard of merino wool before.
Really?
Today, right?
Oh
now.
my god!
I knew a girl called Marina Wool actually.
This is like polyester.
She was
First name, middle name.
She was a prop forward. She broke my ankle once in a sexy role play.
I tell you what, they're tough. Those prop
Yeah,
forwards.
the polyester and merino wool.
Merino
up the front.
wool. She was one of the best. No longer with us. Dead now, of course.
She's in the Hall of Fame now. You know,
Yeah.
gold statue.
Yeah.
But so merino, I never heard of merino. What is
Oh, it's
merino
incredible.
wool? Is that swimming sheep?
I think it's a certain type of sheep in a process, I believe, and it's 100. This is like if you get 100% merino wool, and this is the other thing as well. It's like food, if you're going to spend something onto it that's going to go a long way for you, and it's an investment. Like they cost a little bit more merino wool, a nice merino wool top, but it will last you years. I've had this years.
What was our mate Doug? What's his company called?
Oh, Zenkai.
Zenkai.
Yeah.
He's pretty cool because he has this apparel technology where you sweat in it, but it doesn't go. Your sweat doesn't go in the clothes.
So the material doesn't absorb the water, so it repels it. So it will never smell.
Yeah,
so
it's really
and it
mad.
actually pulls back into your body. So the whole idea about when you sweat, right,
Is
the
to
sweat
cool, yeah.
pull you down.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of sportswear,
I
it
think-
absorbs it.
Yeah,
and
I think it
stops you
prohibits
sweating.
it
and it makes you
prohibits
sweat
the
more.
evaporation. Yeah,
it makes you sweat more because then you
because
end
you're
up.
catching all that vapor in it
Yeah.
inside. Whereas this Senkai stuff lets the vapor of your sweat get out.
Well, I think it's the other way around. I think it keeps it on you, so it repels it back onto you.
I think we need to get Doug on.
Yeah,
the
I think we are having Doug on at some point.
butchering the technology.
You need to get Doug on.
Yeah.
High tech
But
clothing.
it is pretty amazing because Doug was a professional hockey player.
Ice hockey, yeah.
Ice hockey player, yeah. And you know, he's been selling these to different sports teams and stuff. And they wear these and train in these for like a week, 2 weeks, and they still don't stink.
Don't smell. I wore one of his tops in the gym for a good couple of weeks to really test it out, and didn't.
Yeah, it didn't.
And I was going
didn't
to
smell at all.
look, it doesn't smell of anything. It's just neutral. It's just neutral. pH 7.5. But yeah, it didn't smell.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it didn't take on.
That is
It's
pretty
the
cool.
bacteria in the material. So it's the sweat going into the material, absorbing into the material. It's the bacteria buildup in that material that causes the smell. It's not actually the sweat.
'cause it's sweat on sweat. That's when it
Yeah.
starts to
Pre-cheese.
stink.
Yeah.
is what's
Yeah,
going on.
exactly.
It starts to get saucy.
Oh yeah.
Well, guys, this is nice and sweet. Our first foray into talking about fashion.
Yeah. That was a good intro.
You
know
know
what?
Do a few more of these.
It was a very warm weekend, and I was in the act of coitus. And I swear to God, sweat definitely enhances coitus.
We'll finish on that.
Thank you, guys. In case you're wondering,
Come on, producer Byron!
see you later, guys. Like and subscribe.
This is a Marina sheep. Let's hope that doesn't make a nasty jingle. Listen, lads, the Earthlocker podcast is opinions of the host and of the guests, and it's not Bible, it's not fact, it's just a platform for sharing ideas, right? And all the content of this podcast is solely owned by us, that's right! And copyrights reserved by the Earthlocker.